A couple of Toronto Blue Jays relievers are drawing some serious interest from contending teams, and we knew that this would happen. But the Jays, in a year where their bullpen has been one of the worst in baseball, they do have a couple of gems in there in Jimmy Garcia and Chad Green, and those guys could fetch them a pretty decent haul if other teams were to get into a bidding war. So we'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, everybody? Welcome into Jay's Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis. Today we're going to be and Nick Gosse. Sorry, almost forgot. Sorry about that, Nick. The Blue Jays are going to start making some subtractions, but we aren't. So don't worry about that. Sorry about that, Nick. But welcome in, everybody. We're going to be talking about the relievers of the Toronto Blue Jays, and most notably, we're going to be talking about Jimmy Garcia and Chad Green, who have been drawing some serious interest from other contending ball clubs. And Nick, we knew that this was bound to happen. We knew that the Jays do have some hot commodities at this year's deadline, whether it be Danny Jansen, Yusei Kikuchi, maybe Justin Turner if you want to throw him in there. But there are some pieces on this Blue Jays current roster that can fetch them a decent return. We're not talking about top prospects or anything, but something to build on for the future. And I think these two pieces right here in Chad Green and Jimmy Garcia are really going to help them out in accelerating this retool or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and we obviously know that Yusei Kikuchi is one of the guys, Danny Jansen, they might get traded, but Jeff Passan came out and made a very interesting claim. Before I do, quick reminder, hit the subscribe button. It would mean the world to Peter and myself. But he went on ESPN, a radio show, or on SportsCenter, it was one of the two, and Jeff Passan said the Blue Jays reliever Jimmy Garcia is a popular name among contenders. And if you actually watch the little clip there, he basically says that obviously the Jays are probably going to keep Vladdy, they're probably going to keep Bo, but Jimmy Garcia at this moment is the player that is most likely to not only get traded, but is generating the most interest among all the rentals on the Toronto Blue Jays. You can see the veteran right-hander is scheduled to become a free agent after this season. Passan notes also that the team is focusing on trading Kikuchi, Trevor Richards, Danny Jansen, and Justin Turner. And we focused on Trevor Richards before and things like that, but Jimmy Garcia, and we'll get into Chad Green in a minute in a report that dropped today. Jimmy Garcia seems like the guy that's going to be headed out of Toronto no matter what happens, just because he's a pending UFA. The Jays don't need, I mean, their bullpen's bad, but they don't need a reliever to win games right now. They're not going to win, regardless of their relief pitching. What are your thoughts on this, Peter? I think it makes tons of sense, and I'd trade him. Simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, I would too. There's no other way to put it, Nick. And it reminds me a lot of the Moneyball scene, the movie there, where you have Billy Bean go into it was actually was it Mark Shapiro's office? I think it was Mark Shapiro's office when he was with the Cleveland Indians at the time, and he said, I want to get Ricardo Rincon, who was a reliever, and he said, "Yeah, Billy, I think it's a luxury that you can't afford right now." And then you fast forward a few months, Cleveland is out of it, which is what is the exact scenario that is happening to the Toronto Blue Jays right now, and Mark Shapiro at the helm. And now he's got to deal one of his relievers that he couldn't have even imagined having to deal at the start of the season. The Jays were supposed to be a playoff team, maybe not a division winner, but definitely a playoff team. No one could have envisioned the step back that they have taken. And I know I see some comments every video saying, "Oh, I predicted this. They were going to win 75 games this year." Well, you want to clap? There you go. There you go. You got your slow clap. I don't know if anyone wanted this miserable season that we've been experiencing. And unfortunately, this is what we've gotten. We've gone a season littered in injuries, littered in misery, and just underperformance all across the board. And the Blue Jays need to do some damage control here, and that starts with dealing away some expiring contracts that you thought were going to play a big role for you on a contending team this year.
Yeah, very unfortunate. I mean, you mentioned it coming into the year. Jimmy Garcia was a very, very interesting reliever. Didn't have a great year last year, but was still pretty pivotal to that bullpen. But then this year really stepped up, especially when Eric Swanson struggled and Jordan Romano went out with an injury. He is the best reliever, debatably. The second guy we're about to discuss probably is honestly having a better season. But coming into the season, you never would have thought the Jays would be selling off their bullpen arms because they're not in a playoff spot. And speaking of bullpen arms, John Morosi. Yes, I know a lot of you, when you see John Morosi's name, don't get super excited, but the Yankees are interested in a reunion with Chad Green, which makes sense on a number of levels. Great season in Toronto, can close, they can pitch in earlier leverage situations, and of course, he was with the New York Yankees just a couple years ago. He signed for 2025 as well. And this is a guy, and this one's a bit more interesting, Peter, and a bit more convoluted because obviously this year he's been elite, 1.88 ERA. Last season he was kind of coming back from injuries, had a rough year, but he's always been a very good to elite reliever in this league, specifically with the Yankees for the first handful of seasons of his career, 6 years there. This is a bit of a tougher question because, yes, you can get a great haul, and he's probably having as good of a first half of a season that you could have asked for, especially from a trade value perspective. He is under control for one more year, but if the Jays are trying to contend next year, I don't know if trading Chad Green is something that Ross and Mark Shapiro are open to doing necessarily, especially compared to Jimmy Garcia, which seems like a no-brainer.
I wouldn't hold back on Chad Green either if I'm the Blue Jays front office. And I understand that you do want to compete next year and you want to keep some guys around that are under team control. But Chad Green, the fact that he's been one of the more consistent relievers in baseball over the course of his entire career and that he's under control for next season, I think that gives him a ton of value heading into this year's trade deadline. So I get it that you want to compete, but again, bullpen arms, we see how much they fluctuate from year to year, right? Like the Blue Jays had a top five bullpen in the league last season, and that was spearheaded by Eric Swanson and Jordan Romano. Swanson just got called up from the minor leagues, and Romano has been on the IL for what feels like 3 years now, which is not the case, but you know what I mean. It feels like it's been a long time since we've seen Jordan Romano pitch in a Blue Jays uniform. So we see the year to year for relievers is not, we're not able to map it out. It's very tough unless you're an elite reliever, a potential Hall of Famer like Emmanuel Clase or Ryan Helsley. It's tough to know exactly what you're getting out of a bullpen arm. So I get the Chad Green thing. I understand that the Blue Jays would like to keep him and contend next season, but I don't think he's a luxury that they need right now. He's a very good reliever. He's someone who has saved their behinds multiple times this year, but I just don't think they need him at this point, and they can go ahead and get other relievers in free agency this offseason if they want to go ahead and compete. It's not an exact science, but bullpen arms very hard to map out from year to year.
Yeah, and his value is as high it'll be as it will be in a Toronto Blue Jays uniform. Best first half you could have asked for. One more year of control after this with the team option. So it makes tons of sense. And the Jays, as we all know now, are not even remotely competing for a playoff spot. They're still playing games. We still watch the games, but they're definitely not competing for a spot there. And yeah, I agree. I think it's a time to let go of the bullpen arms. You can call up guys from the minors to fill the spot. You can sign guys in the offseason. I don't think next season the Jays' playoff hopes will be decided off either one of these guys. That being said, they will need to make some bullpen additions if they're trying to compete next year if they get rid of both of them. And maybe some of the assets they get back, whether that's in the form of prospects and younger relief pitching or just younger pitchers in general, could do to that, could kind of play into that next season. Any final thoughts before we wrap up? It's not the conversation I was expecting to have exactly 1 week away from the deadline, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Just end the season already. Just end the season. Get across the finish line in one piece. If you're Vladimir Guerrero Jr., if you're Spencer Horwitz, if you're pretty much anybody that's going to be here from next season to the year after that, just get across the finish line. This season has been miserable. Nothing has gone your way. And regroup in the offseason. There's nothing else you could do. But I really think it's time we put this year to rest. And I don't think the Blue Jays have any chance of making the playoffs. So get what you can this deadline. Try to restock your farm system because it's one of the worst in baseball, and then go from there. I mean, there's no other option that the front office has, and maybe, please, just maybe, make some changes this offseason, whether it be in management, whether it be in the coaching staff. Just make some changes because they've managed to turn this team in from one of the most exciting, most lively teams in baseball in just a couple of years ago to one of the most boring, unwatchable products that we've seen in quite some time. I haven't been to the Rogers Center this year, Nick, and I don't know if I plan on going because I don't think it's worth my hard-earned money to go and watch this team and spend money to watch this team in person. I'm still going to watch the games on TV and everything, but I just don't see the point in taking a trip and spending $1,000 to go watch the Blue Jays. No, thank you.
Yeah, all that's left for this year is to hopefully get some decent prospects for these guys and watch the young guys grow and can hopefully continue to see Vladdy turn back the clock to 2021. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. Out of these two players, who do you want to get traded more? And do you agree with Peter and I that it might be time to let Chad Green go as well, which is definitely not a conversation we thought we were going to be having. But that's the way this season from hell has went. So let us know in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. See you soon.